Hi everyone, this is Dr. Andrew Rimby and welcome back to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. I am so excited because I'm with Dr. Sid Dobrin from University of Florida. I will introduce you all to Sid's work. This is the episode you all have been asking for, waiting for. It is about artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality, all the AI, AR, VR questions on your mind. So Sid is actually the professor and chair in the English department at University of Florida. He is positioned within writing studies. His research focuses on the digital humanities, environmental humanities. He looks at the relationship between writing and emerging technologies. He's told me already that he's done over 40 talks recently about AI across the world. So, he's prepared and ready to discuss all of our burning questions. He also examines what I find fascinating too. Not only does he look at artificial intelligence, but he looks at questions around ecological properties of writing. So eco-criticism, eco-composition, oceanic criticism. Sid is everywhere all at once. He is the founding director of the Trace Innovation Initiative, a research hub that studies emerging writing technologies such as AI, AR, VR. He has been named a digital thought leader by Adobe. He is a member of the Florida Institute for National Security, which is part of University of Florida's AI initiative. And he has just published and released AI in Writing by Broadview Press, which is what got me, to see Sid's work and look at all that you're doing, Sid. But I know that you also have a book coming out called AI and Humanities. He also has a podcast called The Fishing Professor, available everywhere except Apple right now, but we'll change that soon. So Sid, welcome to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
So I have to first ask you, just when it comes to AI, how did you even learn about artificial intelligence, programming? Like, was this something recent just from the cultural thirst for AI and it being constantly in our news feed, or is this something you've always just been fascinated with?
Well, tangentially always been fascinated with. When I was a kid, my folks, who were both academics, were very alert to shifts in technology. And I think it was back in 1978, somewhere between Apple II and Apple III, the Apple IIe. We got our first Apple II, and my folks made my brothers and I, who were also academics, go on weekends to learn how to code and program. And back then, it was also a matter of taking the machine apart, knowing how to install new boards. So the tech has always been there for me. In fact, my first ever teaching gig, I taught 2 courses. I taught one course in technical writing and then went across the hall and taught coding. So I've always had the interest in the emerging technology. And of course, back then, in the mid 80s, late 80s, early 90s, with movies like War Games and Weird Science and all the other kind of cultural representations of AI, certainly triggered a lot of my thinking, and I read a lot about things like that. But it wasn't really until after graduate school that I really started thinking more and more about emerging tech as an academic pursuit. I was very particularly interested in concepts of how machines do things for us. So even back then I had been thinking about it, and more recently, when AI itself sort of emerging from the late 80s, mid 90s AI winter, and research started to pick back up in AI, I made an attempt to take that Peter Norvig, Stuart Russell MOOC on AI, but realized I absolutely do not have the mathematics skills to be able to think through the coding and programming of AI. So my thinking sort of shifted to the bigger questions surrounding AI. And long before the November OpenAI drop of ChatGPT and DALL-E, I was spending a lot of time thinking about what are the big enduring questions that are going to surround this, but more so also how we were seeing a shift in the research areas of AI to focus more on platform adoption, how we're going to be using this, particularly in no-code environments. where we're trying to figure ways to deploy AI rather than necessarily trying to rethink how are we going to build new kinds of approaches to neural networks and machine learning and those sorts of things. It became a moment where we shifted to the platform approach to deployment rather than how do we improve on what the AI concept is.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that you were teaching technical writing, like during this exploration you went on, because when I was an undergrad, I mean, this is only maybe 11 years ago, I had taken a technical writing course, and to see the shift of like what my syllabus or concept of technical writing then was more about professionalization, building your resume, learning spreadsheet technology, maybe dabbling a little in audio editing, but it was pretty basic in the sense of Skype, maybe. I think we had Skype technology, but we weren't really doing a lot with video softwares. Do you feel like what we're going through right now, what we're living through in this technical innovation, is similar to that Y2K panic, like where there was both the, like you mentioned Apple, like I remember Apple, BlackBerry started to really become key in our movies. I think of early 2000s movies like Mean Girls, they have BlackBerries, and it's such a newfangled idea of actually having a phone on you that you can flip up and type away. So do you see like where right now there's the camp where they're so almost hysteric over and scared about what this means for our everyday applications, and then you also see it from the technical side of those who are actually creating the innovation, and they are seeing the potential of the technology and how it's going to amplify our everyday processes?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly an interesting question in that our media representation, our popular cultural representation of what AI or any kind of emerging technology can do always influences a lot of how we're thinking about these things in a larger cultural context. It doesn't necessarily mean there's any kind of inherent accuracy to it. You know, we've had moral crisis about just about every kind of technology that impacts education ever since the beginning. One of the things I note in the AI and writing book, for instance, is 20 years ago we had this same exact moment of panic in the academy about Wikipedia. Students aren't going to learn how to think for themselves. They're not going to know how to do research. We need to ban it from campuses. And now Wikipedia is listed as an educational tool. So it's all part of that initial kind of what do we do with it. But we had the same exact thing about chalkboard, ballpoint pens, the printing press. In fact, I've got a series of newspaper clips about in the early 1900s about how reading was going to destroy the world. Don't forget, Socrates, Plato warned us, writing